138th Kentucky Derby live and exclusive here on Racing UK this evening. Last time it was the turn of the Kentucky Oaks, and we're going to reflect on that race and look ahead to this evening's action with Dave Gutfreud, who of course we always get in, our American expert, whenever we have top American races. Dave, great to see you. Glad you can join us again.
It's great to be back here. The new studios are amazing, and looking forward to my 6th Kentucky Derby in the last 7 years for Racing UK.
They're a bit bigger, aren't they?
There's a bit more spacious. It's tremendous. The screens are unbelievable. I love that back there, by the way. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, you're going to be able to see everything on that screen.
I think Angus, James, and myself are going to have a good time tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Angus and James will be at the helm with Dave this evening for our coverage of the Kentucky Derby. Let's reflect on last night, though. And this was the Kentucky Oaks, won by Believe You Can. First of all, the thing we must mention is the weather last night.
Yeah, there was a huge wind and rain delay, 45 minutes. They had to evacuate the infield. Tremendous shots from Louisville there. It was a huge rainstorm last night as well, but there was a lot of concern for the Kentucky Oaks. But by the time the race started, amazingly, Lydia, after a 45-minute delay, the track was still fast.
Was it?
Yes.
And talk us through the race.
Well, there were 14 pretty competitive fillies going 1 1/8 in the Kentucky Oaks, and the number 6 horse is Broadway Alibi, and she's going to make the lead under Johnny Velasquez for trainer Todd Pletcher. Up on her outside is the number 9 horse, and that is Rosie Napravnik aboard Believe You Can for trainer Larry Jones, who won the Kentucky Oaks with Proud Spell back in 2008. And essentially, these two horses went around the track together. Sitting on the inside at this point was the number 1, On Fire Baby. She was the 4-to-1 second choice in the wagering. 4-to-1 second choice. And the number 2 horse, that's Grace Hall, sitting in 5th right now. She was the actual favorite in the race. A couple notes on yesterday's races, Lydia. First of all, Speed did extremely well on a racetrack that produced a 7-furlong track record and a number of stakes records yesterday. And also, according to a lot of people who watch the races, people who I respect, the rail was not the place to be yesterday. Now, day in, day out, that can change at American racetracks, but the inside was not the place to be, and On Fire Baby seemingly was up against it down on the inside. But there's very little action in this race. It's kind of a boring race to watch if you want to know the gosh honest truth, because basically these two fillies go around the track together. Believe You Can's owned by the former governor of Kentucky, Brendan Jones, trained by Larry Jones, the Jones boys, if you will. And basically, these two horses go around the track together. Look how far off the rail Velasquez has Broadway Alibi coming down the stretch. And On Fire Baby spinning her wheels on the inside. Grace Hall on the outside in the white noseband. Moving up, but a mild third, if you will. The time for this race was quite quick yesterday, 1:49.2 for the 1 1/8, and Believe You Can, at odds of 13-1, beats Broadway's Alibi in the 138th running of the Kentucky Oaks.
Fantastic, and that meant the first female jockey with the success in the Kentucky Oaks, Rosie Napravnik. Tell me about her.
Oh, she's been fantastic. Rosie's becoming a superstar. She shifted her tack now, riding full-time in New York after being the leading rider at the fairgrounds over the last couple winters. She was second in this race last year aboard St. John's River and does one better, winning the Kentucky Oaks with Believe You Can. And there were tears in her eyes as she was returning to the winner's circle, understandably.
Fantastic, great achievement. And she's got the fractions right, clearly. As you were saying, boring race to watch means the jockeys up front got it bang on.
Absolutely, and I don't expect a similar scenario to play out in tonight's Kentucky Derby with all the speed signed on in the race.
OK, well, let's look ahead to tonight's Kentucky Derby. We've got some prices for you, and Dave can talk you through what he fancies. These are William Hill prices, and there are joint favourites of 5-1, Bodemeister and Union Rags. Gemologist is 6-1, Dullahan 8-1, Creative Cause is 9-1, and 12-1, and upwards the rest. Dave, the floor is yours.
Well, it's just tremendous betting opportunities here. 20 horses going 1.25 miles. Union Rags is actually, much to my surprise, probably going to go off the favorite at Churchill Downs today over Bodemeister, who at least up to this point has proven to be the most talented 3-year-old. However, I think Bodemeister has a lot of things going against him tonight. Inexperience, coming back on 3 weeks rest. Mike Smith not being the grittiest jockey in the midst of a 20-horse field, and I think the pace scenario very much plays against Bodemeister. Union Rags, you know, he seems to get in trouble all the time. He's been pointed for this race specifically by Mike Matz, who, of course, won the Derby 6 years ago with Barbaro, and Union Rags, certainly a sentimental favorite of a lot of the American punters. Gemologist, amazingly, 5 for 5, trained by Todd Pletcher. Nobody's talking about him. And some of these horses that are in the 12 to 14 to 1 range, Alpha, I'll Have Another, Take Charge Indy. In other years, those horses would be contenders for favoritism, but what we have in the 2012 Kentucky Derby, Lydia, is an amazingly strong field, especially relative to the last few years in terms of strength and depth, as any one of the top 9 contenders could be considered coming to this race with perfect lead up into the Kentucky Derby.
And is there going to be a strong pace in the race?
There's going to be a very strong pace in the race due to the late inclusion of a horse called Triniberg, who's a stone sprinter, won his last 2 races at 7 furlongs. Last year on Breeders' Cup Day, he went 20-4 for the first 6 furlongs of his for the first quarter mile of his 6-furlong race. And speaking of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, one of the main stories leading up to this year's Derby, 9, amazingly, of the 13 horses in last year's Breeders' Cup Juvenile are back for this year's Kentucky Derby.
Right. And for those people who like to fly the flag for Ireland and Britain, the European hope, what chance, if any, does Daddy Longlegs have?
Not much. Sorry to say it like that. I mean, he ran so poorly in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile over the track. There's nothing, at least off of that run, that I could take going into the Kentucky Derby to believe that he's going to run well. But he is trained by Aidan O'Brien. He is owned by the Coolmore people. And those people know a little bit about about horse racing than I do. And I would leave it into their hands that they know what they're doing.
Are you going to tell us your selection now, or are you going to wait till this evening?
I'm going to tease our viewers with my top 2 selections, and by the time we get to 9 o'clock tonight, I think we can come up with just one. But the 2 horses I'm looking at are Take Charge Indy, a son of AP Indy out of a Grade 1 winning mare, Take Charge Lady, who is very good, is second in the Kentucky Oaks, bred for the distance. Calvin Burrell rides, Florida Derby winner. And the other horse I'm looking at is Dullahan, the Bluegrass winner. He may be better on synthetics, but he's the best late runner in a race that's jammed with speed and gets a dreamy pace scenario.
Okay, Dave, thank you very much for previewing the race. It sounds very exciting. I'll definitely be tuning in. Make sure you do too, and you'll be finding out from Dave which of those 2 are his actual selection. He's shortlisted those 2. Let's look ahead to this evening's coverage of the 138th Kentucky Derby. Angus McNay, James Willoughby and Dave Gutfreud will be here live to guide you through the Woodford Reserve Classic and the Kentucky Derby from Churchill Downs. Now,